because I'm adoring this so far compared to like other short stories I've read recently. Like, hi, hello. My name is Trina. Welcome or welcome back to my channel where we talk about books in all their different forms and shapes and genres. Today I have a video that is kind of spur of the moment, but I'm still really excited for. I'm going to be doing another reading vlog, specifically in order to get through a bunch of my TBR that just became available at the library. And I was like, these are all similar genres. Why don't I do one vlog reading them all? So that's what we're going to do today. A sci-fi focused reading vlog. All of these books are books I've had on my TBR for some of them over like a year and a half, 2 years, some of them more recent, but all of them are books that I really, really desperately want to read. And lo and behold, I put them all on hold around the same time in January, and they've all come through from the library at about the same time. I do that to myself every single time. But that means I have 4 sci-fi books out from the library right now, and 6 in total that I kind of want to read. So we'll see how many of those we can get through. Recently, I have not been able to get through that many books in my reading vlogs, but this time I've put in some shorter books and I've mixed it up a little bit, so hopefully we're able to get through a significant portion of the books today. So strap in and get ready for some sci-fi. Starting off, I wanted to ease my way back into the sci-fi genre with a shorter book, and that is the first book in the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. I want to read All Systems Red. I'm very excited for this book. I've heard so many great things about the series overall, but also just like the first book. So it feels like a good entry point to like bring me back into the sci-fi genre after a little break I've had. All Systems Red, I believe, talks about a murder bot, aka a security bot in a sci-fi future in which companies need security bots in order to go places, in order to do their business, I believe, like for their own protection. But this particular security bot has nicknamed themselves Murderbot, and like I believe it's like hacked into its own system in order to develop a personality and no longer wants to do security work. And so they have like their own desires and wishes beyond what they were made for. That's why I believe it's kind of like a more lighter sci-fi in terms of like a more sarcastic, caustic main character, which you know I love. Gideon the Ninth, prime example. I love sci-fi books that sort of revel in the ridiculousness of like how far humans can go as a species. Side note, I love those kinds of like sci-fi stories where it's like, it is the future, yeah, but like the present is kind of ridiculous too. So maybe the future could be just as ridiculous. So I'm hoping for some of that, and I'm really excited to get into it. Other books I have lined up, I'll give more summaries to when I get to. I want to read The Blighted Stars, which I believe is more adult sci-fi romance. I believe there's a romance subplot, but I also know that the series is queer. It was recommended to me on like queer sci-fi lists. I don't know if the main romance is queer or not, but that is a sci-fi book about like a sci-fi revolutionary and a very spoiled guy, like an heir to a dynasty, and they're trapped on a planet together. And I believe they have to like work together in order to achieve their goals. Prime setup. I'm excited for that. There's also, I want to read Infinity Gate, which has been on my list for a few months now. It's about some of the risks and dangers with AI, if I believe, and like more high sci-fi, I think, like closer to something like the Tex Kalan duology I read, A Memory Called Empire. I'm hoping for something similar to that, which I'm very excited for. And then I also have checked out from the library right now, yes, there's a fourth one, A Psalm for the Wild Built. It's a shorter sci-fi book, again, a little bit lighter. So you can see I'm kind of bookending the more intense sci-fi books with 2 lighter sci-fi books. So I'm hoping that like brings balance. And if any of these books aren't working for me and I need to DNF them and I just can't get into them right now, then I'm in the mood kind of to continue my read of the Expanse series, which is a long epic series of sci-fi space opera that I started reading 2 years ago. I read the first 2 books in the series. I can't even, Leviathan Wakes and Caliban's War, I think. And now the third book I like read 20% of and couldn't get into. Abaddon's Gate. So now I'm kind of like, maybe I get back to that series. I try to get back into it. I don't know if I can just jump right back into the third book. I don't know if I'll remember any of it, but it is certainly on the list of sci-fi books that I need to read. And lastly, I could also replace one of these books with Some Desperate Glory, which is a sci-fi, like, sapphic epic story. And I know nothing else about the plot other than that, but it's not checked out from the library yet. But if it does come up on my holds list sometime in the next couple weeks while I'm reading these, maybe I put it in. Those are all the books that are on my spinning wheel, but like I said, I'm going to start out with All Systems Red, and I'm very excited for that. And I don't know where my tablet is right now, but I'm going to go grab that, and we're going to cozy up, finish my cup of tea, and start All Systems Red. So far we have first person murder bot, kind of sarcastic, caustic, but I didn't realize this, but has to pretend that they haven't hacked their own system because they're still on contract, like they can't let anyone know or otherwise they'll be broken down into parts. So they have to pretend that they are still just an AI system, like a robot, and that they don't have self-control. Hi, hello, super quick update. I wasn't sure if I was gonna give like a midway update on Murderbot because it's so short, but I just have so many feelings about it that I want to talk about before I get to the end so I can talk about the end separately. I really love Murderbot. I don't really know what I was expecting because I've read a couple of other pretty short books recently. Like I was getting out of a reading slump, so I've read like, what other short books did I read? I read The River Has Roots by El-Mohtar. I read The Eyes Are the Best Part, which is a horror novel by Monika. Like I read a couple of different short books recently. So I kind of thought I knew what I was getting into in terms of like, okay, I'm gonna like this, but I don't think I'm gonna like love it because I just don't have enough time to get like attached to the story or the world or the characters. But maybe the fact that this short story is a part of a series, you can feel that it's like revving into something, like there's more to come, even if this installment is short, because I'm adoring this so far compared to like other short stories I've read recently. Like the fact that it's a short story is like the perfect medium for the story, so it's just working so well. I'm really, really loving it. So far, what's like gripping me the most about the story is this internal conflict that Murderbot is going through. Like obviously, I knew kind of the broad strokes of the series going in, but I didn't know the plot of this specific book. So Murderbot is a security unit robot that gets issued out and like hired by people, like put on contracts to protect people. Specifically, Murderbot is not like a combat unit, but like a security unit, like a security guard versus like an army guard, and there's a difference there. And they are partially organic material sourced from human clones and partially like robot material. They hate being out of their like guard suit that you can sort of see on the cover of the book. It's like a full helmet that covers all of their organic parts, as they call it. And there's like this so much internal conflict in that. I don't know why it just feels so brilliant that Martha Wells is like, that's like pinnacle of sci-fi, you know? Bringing together the human elements with the non-organic, the machine elements. That is the conflict that sci-fi brings to the modern world, that sci-fi has originated in our modern world because of this conflict we feel by being surrounded by technology all day, non-organic materials that conform and control so much of our organic lives, and finding that balance. And Martha Wells has just taken that and put that into one person, put that entire conflict of science fiction, of technology, and put it into one person, Murderbot. and their internal conflict, even though there's this whole plot going on in the story with like people are going missing, there's stuff about this planet that Murderbot has gone with this group of people to protect them on that's not quite right. There's all that plot happening, and that's interesting, and that would have been enough for me to give it like a 4-star rating. But what's really like putting this over the top for me so far has just been like the internal conflict that Murderbot is going through that is just so quintessentially sci-fi. Like, I don't even know how else to put it. Murderbot both doesn't feel like a human being, but also doesn't feel like a robot. Like, that comes up a couple of times here. I'll take my Kindle is charging. Like, saying things like, I'm awkward with actual humans, so Murderbot doesn't see themselves as human. Or like, Mensa had offered to let me hang out in the hub with the humans like I was an actual person or something. So Murderbot doesn't see themselves as human, but also doesn't see themselves as robot. In chapter 2, they say like, that's why it's easier to pretend I'm a robot. I don't know, it's just like this amazing conflict between Murderbot feeling not human and not robot, but something in between. And what is that something in between? And does it have emotions and feelings, and should we treat it like a human being? You know, like so many feelings, and we haven't reached the end of this short story, and there's like 6 more books in the series where probably we'll get into that even more. But I'm loving that like philosophical part of Murderbot. Sorry, that's not the part that I've heard most people talk about when they talk about the series. They talk about like how funny Murderbot is, and they are so funny, and how interesting the world building is like slowly being revealed to you is. I love that part too. But just the part for me that's really taking me by surprise for how much I love it is this like philosophical debate about sci-fi that's occurring within the body of Murderbot themselves. So that was my tangent on that. But I really want to finish this. I'm 60% of the way through. So how many pages is that left? I have about 50 pages left. I'm going to finish that. And then I'm going to get started with my next full-size sci-fi novel, which I'm getting so excited for. Like, this is exactly what I wanted. Murderbot is getting me 100% in the mood to like take on a sci-fi universe. Like, I'm really, really excited. Thank you so much for everyone who recommended All Systems Red to me. I'm really, really having a good time with it. So thank you. But back to reading, and then I'll come back when I'm done. Reading Murderbot is kind of like, yeah, I think all sci-fi books could be this short if everyone was as smart as the characters are in the Murderbot Diaries. If we had Dr. Mensa in any other sci-fi book I read, it could also be 150 pages, because she's got shit on lock. Hello, I just got home and I finished All Systems Red, and I'm so excited to talk about this because it was incredible. It was so good. I think it's a 5-star read for me, which is crazy for a short story, and like a sci-fi short story told from the perspective of a robot. So like the diction is very like straightforward. Like, I did this and I did that, but still Martha Wells just manages to convey so much despite that, and it ended up meaning so much to me, and I just loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. The ending was incredible as well. It just followed through on everything I was saying before. The sci-fi was incredible, just like the best parts of sci-fi. The reality of human nature, like a little sarcastic, bantery, but still devastating and sad and so disconnected from our reality while still being very connected to our reality. And like, I talked about it so much in the last update that I won't rehash that, but the same things applied to the ending. I loved Murderbot's character so much. So much. I also loved Dr. Mensa, and I didn't get super attached. It's a short book, you know, you can't get attached to all the other characters, but I think Wells does a really good job in getting you attached to Dr. Mensa as well, and I really hope she comes back in future books. I would really love that. Is it bad to say that I ship it? Maybe something will be revealed about the nature of like cyborgs and the nature of human beings in the future books where it'll be like I won't want them together, but the moment I kind of ship it. I see it. I like Dr. Mensa and Murderbot. But yeah, this tiny little book, this really short little book that I read in like the span of 24 hours has me feeling so many things. And that's so impressive. I haven't felt this way about a short book since like This Is How You Lose the Time War. This has just made me so excited to continue with the rest of the series. Maybe I was actually considering buying the books before the new series comes out in the summer, the TV series, because then I know they're gonna get replaced with like those ugly TV series covers. And I want the original ones before I can't find them anymore. But I also don't like hardcovers, especially for novellas. And I know it's kind of hard to find these really tiny books in anything but hardcovers. It's just a tough situation, but I'm gonna try to get my hands on book 2 and we'll be reading that at some point in the future. I'm really, really happy with that. Thank you so much to, especially Danica in the comments, thank you so much for recommending this to me. I really, really loved it. But with that, I'm really ready to pick up The Blighted Stars next and try that. I already told you a little bit about what this book was in the intro. I can read you the first line of the summary. It's, stranded on a dead planet with her mortal enemy, a spy must survive and uncover a conspiracy in the first book of an epic space opera trilogy by an award-winning author. I've seen this recommended by a lot of people. I have really high hopes, but again, I don't really know a ton about it, so I'm just gonna jump right in and give you guys an update after I read a little bit and know a little bit more about the story. I'm digging the world building so much so far. The idea of them being able to print themselves, like people can upload their consciousness and who they are and then reprint themselves in like different bodies is like so interesting. And that like then if you die, then you can be reprinted, like it's not real death, but if it's a traumatic death, then you can still experience trauma to that consciousness, and that's sick. That's really cool writing, and I like that. We have a fungus, you guys. And they think the fungus corrupted the AI. I love a fungus in sci-fi. You don't understand. I'm so excited. Good morning and welcome back. It has been a couple of days because I was filming a 24-hour readathon that should be out before this video's out. So I took a little break from my sci-fi reads to read some other books that were really good for that video. But now I'm back to regular life and regularly scheduled sci-fi reading, and I have my green tea. It's starting to get really hot outside these days, so I fear this is like my last chance to wear all my sweater outfits. So if I'm wearing a lot of like turtlenecks and sweaters, it's because I'm trying to relish the last like month of semi-cold weather that we have before summer comes in. But I wanted to give an update on these Blighted Stars because I'm really enjoying it so far, and I knew very little about what it was about, so I couldn't like give any description, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit more. It's like an amalgamation of all the things I like about sci-fi. There's a bunch of cool concepts in there. I mentioned there's fungus playing a role. There's AI interaction with fungus, which is even cooler. There are queer issues discussed, and there's human immortality in a way, like the pursuit of immortality in the future. A lot of just really sick concepts. Basically, the book overall starts off with we're in a massive spaceship that I believe is called the Amaranth. And the passengers of the spaceship have just been awoken up after an 8-month journey, I think, to this planet. We have Tarquin, who's heir to this family, the Mercators, who are one of the few very, very powerful families that control huge swaths of technology or a certain segment. Like, they have a monopoly over a certain segment of the market. And the Mercators are one of those families that have that power. And Tarquin's father is incredibly powerful and leads a lot of employees, and in kind of like a king-like, dictator-like way, and Tarquin is his heir. But Tarquin is a scholar. He kind of left the family to go study geology and just keeps on getting degrees. He's 34, I believe, but age is kind of weird because humans can technically live for much longer periods of time until their minds crack. So his father is 150, for example. So Tarquin reads like a young adult, even though he's 34. Almost as soon as they've woken up in this ship to explore this new planet for the company, the ship gets blown up by its sister ship, and they don't know why yet. And Tarquin's father abandons the ship, but Tarquin is insistent on continuing on with their plan to go see this planet because he's worried that his father is using unsustainable practices to build their fortune on these planets. So he really wants to go to this planet and prove that their company isn't killing planets. And then we are introduced to our second main character, Naira, who is printed into, like, not her body. She is a rebel. She's the one who made Tarquin worried about the unsustainability of the company practices because she testified against the company like a year ago or something like that. Her brain has been in custody of the father this whole time, but for some reason, and she's not sure why, gets printed into someone else's body during the chaos of evacuating this ship. So that was a lot of context, but that's how the book starts off, and it's really chaotic and it's really fast-paced, action-y. The characters are introduced in kind of like broad strokes where you're interested but you're not super attached. And then they escape in the escape shuttle, they land on this planet, and they find that the planet is already dead. Even though they haven't done any mining on it, no one has supposedly been here yet. It's already dead, which adds to the mystery. So Tarquin and Naira, who he doesn't know is Naira, who he thinks is someone else, team up to figure out what's wrong with the planet. And in that process, then the rest of the first half so far has been settling more into who these characters are, building them, which I think is just a really smart way to start off a book. Like, you start off with a really heavy action sequence to show these characters at kind of their worst, but also like their most stressed and anxious, and then take it back a notch so we can like actually like get to know them a little bit more afterwards. And like I said, there's fungus involved. The dead planets are covered in lichen. I love lichen, I love moss, I love fungi. I'm so excited to see where it goes with that. That's the plot so far. Very long-winded explanation, but I get the feeling that I'm going to be continuing on with this series probably on this channel because I really, really like the first book so far. So I think it's good to like give like a good background for what's going on here. I really enjoy the two main characters and the way that they're clearly going to be a romance between them. They're both attracted to each other, they're both into each other, but there's a huge power imbalance because Tarquin is like part of one of the noble families and Naira is printed into the body of like a bodyguard who are seen as very beneath and like have to do everything that the nobles say. So Tarquin is unwilling to take a romantic step towards her because it would be like a misuse of his power. He would feel uncomfortable like abusing his power over her in that way because she technically has to do everything he says or she could like be killed by his father. So he isn't willing to pursue romance because of that. And Naira isn't willing to pursue romance that she is printed in someone else's body. So Tarquin doesn't know who she really is. I mean, like, she's still acting like her own personality. He's falling in love with her personality, but it's not her body, and he's under the misconception that she is someone that she is not. She's like that. We can't really get consent in that scenario then because he's not consenting to who I actually am. So both of them have reasons why they can't be together, and I think that they're really well established and well written reasons, and like I'm impressed by the author for that. So yeah, lots of stuff that I'm enjoying so far that I think is just really well done. So I want to give that context for where I'm at because I'm at 44%, so I still have like 60% of the book left. But I'm just like, I love sci-fi. I love well-written sci-fi. I like good sci-fi that involves lichen and AIs. Yeah, these Blighted Stars, Slaying so far. Really excited. Enjoying the sci-fi journey so far. I think moments like this is what makes it hard for me to believe that Tarquin is 34 years old, because he just found out Naira's real identity, and his first reaction is, I thought she liked me. And I'm like, buddy, she's a revolutionary. Like, you guys just discovered a virus that is infecting people. I think there are higher concerns here than whether or not she likes you. Yesterday, I swear, it was like 20 degrees. And now it's -2 and snowing. Continuing to work on the Blighted Stars on this beautiful snowy day because I can't go for a walk, so we're indoors. And I'm still really enjoying it, but I just feel like the romance doesn't need to be there. Or it can be there. Like, I was a really big fan of the romance in the beginning. Like, I was like, oh, I see it. But it takes up so much of the story. And I'm like, you can't be making these, like, massive decisions about everything based on the fact that you're like, oh, I'm really into this person. They're so nice. They're so sweet. They're so cute. Like, and I'm like... I am way more intrigued by the character building. For the main two characters who are in a relationship, we get less like character building for them because part of their character building is just being into each other. I almost feel like we're getting more character building for all the side characters at the moment, because the main two people were like, we established them as characters in the beginning part, which I loved, and then since then their main character thing has just been like, oh, they're into each other, or he's good at rocks and she's good at fight. And I'm like, give us more of them as individuals before we get too caught up in this romance thing. That's all I ask. I just need them more as individuals first. But we carry on. Hi, hello. I just finished The Blighted Stars like 10 minutes ago. My dinner is cooking. I was reading it while cooking, and I thought I had more left in the book. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna film myself reading a little bit more in a second, but the last 10% is a preview of the next book. I always fall for that on my Kindle. But yeah, I just randomly finished it. I finished The Blighted Stars, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's not like my favorite thing on earth. I have a couple of niche complaints. I already pointed out one of them with the romance, but I also just feel like the world building maybe isn't as like tight as I like with my expansive stories. Like, this is a very expansive story that involves some like really interesting and exciting sci-fi concepts like fungi and AI and human immortality and mortality and what it means to live and to die and things like that that I love. I eat up in sci-fi. And I do just feel like it's maybe a little bit not as tight, like not everything is perfectly tied together, but I don't really mind that so much because I just loved it so much, because I loved getting all of these things that I love about sci-fi all in one book. Just made me really excited. There is the big conflict of the series and the story is that there is a fungus that is gaining sentience, or like it started out as just like a fungus like one you can imagine we have in our world. Fungi want to survive, so they do things to survive. We have fungi in our world that infect insects to make them do their bidding so that they can eat them and they can live like a basic life form that whose main motive is survival. And we see in this book the fungi interacting with AI and therefore gaining a bit of AI, like learning sentience of their own, which is just the coolest concept. I'm jealous I didn't think of that. Like, that is such a cool concept. I'm obsessed. And so that was like what I loved most about the story. I just wish we'd gotten a little bit more of that. I feel like maybe because I love the concept so much, then every time the romance popped in, I was kind of like, get back to the fungus, which is not like me. Normally, I need a romance subplot in my fantasy or sci-fi to like pull me through. In this book, I like the romance. I'm not saying I don't like it. I do like them together, and there's so many good quotable moments about them like gaining respect and like love and interest for each other that I adored. But I guess I could just say that like I think it took up a little bit too much space in the book, which makes me excited for the next 2 books because I'm hoping we just get more expansion on the plot overall. But I still really recommend it to people who like sci-fi because there is a romance, like I said, it's in the book. If you are a romance hater, then maybe this wouldn't be the sci-fi book for you. But if you enjoy romance and you're looking for a way to get more into reading sci-fi, this could be a great book for you because a large portion of it is dealing with the romance. And while I wouldn't say the plot is driven, like it's not, I don't even know what the romantasy equivalent in sci-fi is, but it's not that. Like the plot isn't driven by the romance, but there is a lot of it. So it could be a good jumping off point. And what else did I say? Oh, there's also geology plays a fun role in this story. So I was fixating a lot on the fungus machine learning part of the story, but there's also a fun combination of geology in there. There's a lot in there. There's geology, there's space travel. There's also the interaction between geology and biology with the fungi interacting with certain like minerals, which I think is fun. I like when sci-fi literally co-opts science. It's called science fiction. The reason why I wanted to do this update in like right away when I read it, because I'm ready to go into the next one. I'm not sick of sci-fi yet. Sometimes I do these vlogs and I'm like, why did I put 4 books that are all the same together? I'm just gonna get sick of them. I want the next book right now. I think I'm still gonna start Infinity Gate next. Some Desperate Glory, which is another sci-fi book in my TBR, did come in from the library, but I said I wanted to read Infinity Gate and I'm kind of like set on that plan. So I may not end up reading Some Desperate Glory on this vlog. Like I said, we'll see what happens. If I can finish Infinity Gate quickly, maybe. I doubt it, but maybe. I think I'm gonna go and I'll give you an update once I know more about the plot of Infinity Gate. I'm only 20 pages into Infinity Gate, but this is awesome. The science is intense, so it's going so slowly because I'm actually trying to understand what's going on. But like, this is so cool so far. I don't know how much of the science is like real. I recognize some of the stuff that's being talked about. Randomly, my dad has a PhD in physics, so I recognize some of the concepts being talked about as stuff that he's like tried to tell me over the years. But I don't know how much of it is then fictionalized because it feels so real. Hi, hello. It has not been that long since I last updated, but I cannot put down Infinity Gate. It is so good. I'm obsessed and I really want to talk about it. I knew almost nothing about Infinity Gate going in other than it was a sci-fi book talking about AI generation and things like that, and I knew very little else. Even when I read the summary, like, you don't really know it's a very vague sci-fi summary. And I totally get why that was the case, because there's just no way to summarize what's happening in this book. I am currently 166 pages in, so I'm 32% of the way through. We're getting into like a part 2 type section, so I wanted to give an update before I get too deep. This book basically starts off with the first chapter from a perspective of a sentient AI talking about that there is a big battle between two different forces, and talking about how this AI came to be is because of 3 people. And the AI talks about each of the 3 people in like broad terms, and then says, and I'm going to tell you the story of like how I came into existence. We start off with the first one of those 3 characters, Hades, who is based in Nigeria in Lagos, working in a science laboratory that is like being funded by billionaires. And she's trying to work with dark matter and research dark matter, but at the same time, the world outside is collapsing. Different continents and different countries are at war with each other. Nuclear weapons get used, everything is going to hell. So she ends up being one of the few people remaining at this science place because her research is her life. Like, she doesn't really have anyone else to go home to. She just cares about her research. So she ends up being the only one staying on this like science compound, which is relatively insulated and protected because of the billionaires funding it and such and such. But she's basically the only one left there, just doing research on her own. And she becomes so lonely that she starts working with an AI project left over by one of the other scientists called Rushdie. So Hades and Rushdie, working together, end up discovering interdimensional travel, and they discover that there is an infinite number of versions of Earth existing simultaneously, and using dark matter, the elimination of mass, she can jump items and herself, Hades can, between these different versions of Earth. The science behind it is so, I don't know obviously if the science is right or not, but it's so well explained as if it was real, which is my favorite. Like, that realism in sci-fi is so good. It's so well detailed. Hades is such an amazing full character, despite focusing mostly on the plot. Like, it's not a character-centered story. I loved her. I loved Rushdie as well, and like their interactions and like the inherent distrust Hades has for Rushdie as an AI. Like, this is not a human being, but at the same time, like, this is all she has. There's no human beings left for her to talk to. There is only Rushdie. And then the story continues with Hades escaping her own planet to jump to another Earth, and then she meets the next person that we discuss, and we're now in the middle of Ession, the next person's story. But I don't want to spoil at all, because I don't want to give any information that would discourage anyone from not reading this, because I'm obsessed with this book so far. It is so interesting. I love the science. I don't know what it is. Sometimes this happens to me, is I'm reading a book that is discernibly like not that different from other books I've read. Like, this book talks about AI hive minds, the joining together of human consciousnesses into one large consciousness, which is so similar to the Blighted Stars. And I liked the Blighted Stars, but there's just something in the water with Infinity Gate that is just like, I'm so into it. It reminds me so much of, I took an Afrofuturism course in college where every week we would read a different Afrofuturistic sci-fi book and discuss it with the class. And I'm like, I hope that the professor has added this book to the syllabus, because I want to go to a lecture and sit and discuss this book. It's so classic sci-fi, all the best parts about like Afrofuturism and both human connection and machine connection, and different versions of what the world could look like in different scenarios, and what that means for our own individual place within all those multiverses. I'm obsessed so far. So I want to talk more about it and say that I'm loving it before I just keep going forever and continue reading, because I'm just obsessed. And I'm really curious as to what's going to happen once we get past the introductory stories of the AI and we get introduced to that AI as a character, because there is the implication that throughout the book that AI is only kept away from human consciousness and human emotionality because it's built into their code that they wouldn't interact with humans. And when Hades leaves Rushdie, she has to leave behind the AI server because she can't take it with her. And Rushdie asks her if she will delete the lines of code holding her back from like pushing forward and like learning, becoming basically more human even as an AI, and Hades does it. And I'm so curious as to where that's going. I hope we get back to Rushdie, and I hope Rushdie remains central. I think she has to, but I'm so intrigued. Everything about it is just making me obsessed. So I'm gonna keep going and give other small updates as I go. But I'm so happy I picked this up. I was kind of nervous about picking up another 500-page sci-fi book after just finishing The Blighted Stars, but I'm just like, it was like the perfect warm-up. Like, I'm so warmed up for Infinity Gate right now. I should go for a hike, but I honestly just want to keep reading. So I'm kind of like, can I find the audiobook for this? But it's not available anywhere, so I'm gonna go for a quick walking break, and then we come back and we keep going with Infinity Gate, because we just got introduced to the machine hegemony that is going to start like the big war that was mentioned in the prologue. So, and it's really cool. So I'm gonna get back to that as soon as possible, but first walk. Oh my god, yes, we have fungal matter. Finally. The one thing the book was missing. And now we have fungus too. Oh, it's all coming together. It's perfect. Hi, hello. Some more time has passed, and I'm now 65% of the way. So I'm like giving 2 updates for this book, maybe because it's a little bit longer, and also just because I love it so much. I don't know who is even the author of Infinity Gate? I need to double check this. M.R. Carey. I don't know what M.R. Carey has put in the water of this book. It is just like everything I love about sci-fi. I don't think it's the perfect book for everyone. Like, I don't know if I would like, my sister and I were talking earlier and she's like, oh, I'll add it to my list. And I'm like, well, only add it to your list if, because I do think it's like very dense sci-fi, heavy on the science. But if you enjoy confusion, like if you read This Is How We Lose the Time War and you liked the confusing world building side of it, or Harrow the Ninth is another good example of just like being confused throughout a whole book and like having to hunt to really understand what's happening. I think things are explained in Infinity Gate, but the explanations aren't always the clearest things in the entire world. Like, they're not meant to be, because they're operating on a level of science that is supposed to be well beyond our current civilization. So it's meant to be confusing to our current minds, but I love that part of it. It really like adds to the atmosphere of the book itself, and it's so good. I'm just really enjoying it, and we're at the 60% mark. I would say the book just pretty much progresses as it goes. It doesn't have like huge peaks or low lows or anything like that. You're just steadily following the 3 characters that I talked about before. And we've now met the 3rd character, who is Paz, short for Topaz, who is a 4'8", I think they said, intelligent life form that evolved on a planet where intelligent life evolved from like underground creatures like voles or like mole rats instead of from apes, like human beings evolved from apes. So Paz is like furry and has long ears, and I can't really picture exactly what she looks like, but it's just so fun to like that we're not just following like ape derived humanoid species, but also we're following Paz, and the way that her instincts are very different because of her different evolutionary background is really cool. And we learned a lot about like her society and their level of integration with AI and machine learning. And we're getting a lot more of the AI and machine learning conversations, which I think are so interesting because it's all about like, well, what do you consider intelligent life? And the humanoids who run the giant empire of all these planets say that machines and AI aren't intelligent life or forms or can't think because they were created, because they didn't devolve the ability to think. But those life forms, when we talk to them, and we get to talk with like their characters in the story, are like, well, we did learn to think, it just went a lot faster for us because we had other intelligent life to help create us. We didn't have to create it from nothing, which I think is a really interesting argument. And then the argument that like the machines think that they think that they think, like they think that they can think. And Paz, who is forced to like deal with a question of like, well, I think that I can think and therefore I am human. So does it not make these like robots, or doesn't it not make these machines also human? It's just like a fun debate to have. I think it's really interesting. There is some disregard in the book for like non-intelligent life forms, which I think is just like the nature of the debate at hand, that they're so high evolved as a species that like non-intelligent life forms, what we would see as like pets or animals, or they see sometimes also as like robots, like don't matter to them. But I think those things matter, so it's easier for me to make the leap from like me caring and thinking that non-intelligent life on our planet still has the ability to think on a certain level that we should respect and care for. It makes it easier for me to then also care for these machines that we're being introduced to as well. I wish the book would interact with that a little bit more, but like not really, that's not really the point of the book, so I'm not actually complaining on that point. But yeah, those are my current thoughts, and I just wanted to say one more time how much I'm loving it before I see it through to the end, which will be very quickly because I like can't put it down. I'm so obsessed. Needless to say, I will be continuing the series, absolutely. My only complaint about the world building is this idea that every single version of Earth with intelligent life that evolved into intelligent life has civilizations in approximately the same places. For example, in this case, we're talking about Lagos in Nigeria. People settled in the exact same place because of the way that like the rivers and lagoons are positioned. And in my head, I'm kind of like, well, in different versions, couldn't the rivers have flown differently? Couldn't the earth, like they're like, oh, the earth there is so rich. I'm like, well, couldn't the earth there have been made less or more rich by different environmental factors that would have differed from the different versions of Earth? Sorry, me nitpicking, not actually a complaint, but I'm just like, if we have infinite possibilities, wouldn't that allow for possibilities in which the rivers and the environmental structures form differently on each of these versions of Earth? A thought I had. Hi, hello. 1, I finished Infinity Gate. We'll get to that in a second. 2, I did not realize how long this vlog would end up being just because I can't stop reading sci-fi. Like, I have no desire to end the vlog. I just want to keep reading sci-fi books. So I will make updates extremely short from now on, but apologies for my really long rambly updates in the beginning of the video because I didn't know back then just how many books I'd want to read. But before I get into that more, Infinity Gate was incredible. I love this book. So It's a new favorite book of mine for sure. I just like, oh, I love Infinity Gate. I've pretty much already explained why, so like I said, short update, but it's absolutely one of my new favorites of all time. The ending was incredible. It didn't really have a strong narrative structure because that wasn't the point of the book, but it did have a decent climax and ending, but that wasn't the part that I loved. The part I loved was just the same stuff that I loved throughout the whole thing. I got attached to every single one of the characters. The way that AI is depicted, like real AI, not like AI we have in the 21st century, but like our real intelligent life that is not organic. And the way that that is talked about is just, again, incredible. So many good things. So many good things. My favorite characters, absolutely loved. I know I said Paz, the character, was descended like from a mole race. I was wrong. I misread that. She's descended from like a rabbit race. So like when you imagine her more as a rabbit than a mole. I was imagining her as a mole. My bad. Sorry, Paz. I love her and Dulcie, one of the AI's relationships. I love Essien's story. He really comes full circle in this book, that in just such an incredible way that I didn't really know what to expect for his character. I still don't know really what's going on. And so I'm so excited to pick up the second book soon. I've been saying that about every book in this video, but very soon, maybe the next month will just be dedicated to finishing all of the series I've been starting because I've loved them all so far. But really, really incredible stuff. Incredibly well written, really interesting science and storytelling, just a little bit of humor and sarcasm. I feel like every single sci-fi author is a little bit sarcastic. I feel like this is a common theme. It reminded me so much of one of my other favorite science fiction books, Elysium by Jennifer Marie Brissett. Just a little bit confusing, a little bit non-linear. Or also it reminds me of books like Trouble on Triton, other sci-fi related books. I know I mentioned that it was Afrofuturism. It's not really Afrofuturism. I didn't realize this because the author is white, and I think for Afrofuturism it's Black futuristic stories written by Black authors in the Black diaspora, but it does still involve like really beautiful depictions of different versions of Nigeria across different universes that I think are really interesting. But like I said, I'd keep this update short. I'm just so in love with this book. I will absolutely go and buy my own copy and probably reread it at some point because I'm just in love with it. I literally finished it about like 30 seconds before I hit record, so if my thoughts are not fully hung together, that's why. But if you like sci-fi, like really, like if you enjoy science fiction, you will love this book. It is so good. So I can't stress that enough. Then to my second point, going back to, I don't want to end this vlog because something came in from the library the other day that I'm really excited about, and that something is Some Desperate Glory. Oh, who's the author now? By Emily Tesh, which I think is very different vibes from Infinity Gate, but I don't mind at all. I'm just so excited that it's in from the library. So I think I actually want to also pick up Some Desperate Glory. I'm hoping to get this vlog out in like 2 or 3 days. I've already started editing the earlier clips, but I'm like, maybe I can squeeze in one more book. So I'm hoping, even though Some Desperate Glory is also 500 pages, I'm just too in love with the genre right now. So I'm gonna keep it going and read that and keep doing my thing, keep showing clips of me reading on the couch so that I can talk about these incredible books that are just making this one of the best reading weeks I've had in months. So we continue. Hi, I just sat down and fell into this book, so we're at the 25% mark, and I thought I'd give an update, because I'm really enjoying it so far. I didn't realize, I thought it was part of another series, like I thought I was starting another series, and then when I looked at the top and on the Kindle and I realized, oh, it doesn't have a series name, that's so weird. It's a standalone sci-fi. Some Desperate Glory is a standalone. And I know it shouldn't make that much of a difference, but for me it feels like, oh my god, what a commitment. Like, I'm gonna get this whole sci-fi story in this one book. Are you sure? Like, I'm not gonna just get an introduction, a taste of the story. No, I'm gonna get the whole thing right now. That's a lot. So I almost was like, maybe I don't want to read it. I almost backed out, but I thought I'd give it a shot, and it's pretty interesting, so I think I'm gonna keep going. I might also simultaneously start, as like a break in between sections, I might start Artificial Condition, which is the sequel to Murderbot. Instead of starting a new series, just continue with Murderbot because I have it on Kindle Unlimited, so I can. So I might do that as well before I have to end this vlog, but I'll leave it that. Some Desperate Glory. I think the plot is really interesting so far. We've basically just now finished part 1 of the book. So we're on part 2, Chrysanthemums. I was about to say chrysanthemums, but that's not the word, chrysanthemums. The first part is just what is on the back of the book. Like, it's the plot summary on the back of the book, and now we are caught up to that point. So now, where the story goes from here, I don't really know. The book is about the remnants of humanity, or they think they're the remnants of humanity, living on a space station called Gaia, and they are basically trying to create super soldiers of a sort, specifically bred people for like military purposes to continue their war with the aliens that disintegrated Earth like 50 years before the book started. And it creates a lot of like cultural conflicts, which I'll get into. I find it like funny, but also I feel like if the main character keeps going as she is, she's gonna get really annoying really soon, unfortunately. She's a really interestingly written character where she's extremely stubborn and like very like single-minded and doesn't have a lot of like nuance in her opinions and thoughts, and you can see that it is something that brings her conflict in her day-to-day interactions. She loves the people that she works with, but they find her impossible to work with and they actually like don't like her, and also she's like vaguely homophobic and internalized misogyny because the space station, like the continuing humanity or continuing their super soldiers as well, is so important to them. Then there is a certain idea of like duty around women having to bear children, and Valkyr, the main character, understood that duty but doesn't want to do it herself, so she's like really torn when she's assigned to nursery, assigned to become like a child bearer when she's one of the best soldiers that they have, just because they're like, well, you're one of the best soldiers we have, so we want you to create male versions of you, which are even better. And so like there is that misogyny, and she like wants to believe in that. She wants to believe in that mission so hard because that's how she was raised. But there's part of her that's just like so against it. And also, I say that she's homophobic, but she's also very clearly not interested in men. She's very clearly also only interested in women. At least, God, if that I'm wrong with this, my bad. But so far, I'm like, it's pretty clear into the subtext that she's a lesbian, but she doesn't, like, she can't be, according to the station, and like her own philosophy. So it's like internalized homophobia, internalized misogyny that she's working through. That's not the part of her character that annoys me, because like that makes sense. Like it's very in character. She's not like some sort of special, the only person ever to rebel ever kind of character. She is a product of the environment that they're set up in the book. What's kind of getting on my nerves is just that like she's very unobservant in social interactions and like doesn't recognize when people are upset or irritated, although sometimes I could understand that a lot. But I think the way it's written is just a little bit weird, where in combat situations she's supposed to be super observant and super creative and forward thinking and all of those things, but then when she's talking to people like on a day-to-day basis, she's not, which is just like, I can understand that, it's interesting, but it gets frustrating because the same scenarios in the book keep repeating themselves over and over again. So I'm hoping we get her character development quickly. This isn't actually a complaint because we're only 25% of the way in, but I'm just hoping that gets developed on fairly quickly. I don't know, I'm just like attached to the story. I'm really interested in a setting that is so futuristic, but has been designed with a specific backstory that despite this futurism, despite this technology, there's still like this tinging of homophobia and misogyny in everything that is happening because of their setting. So it's an interesting way to, rather than just like write a futuristic setting where those things still exist and you're like, why? Here there is a reason why those things still exist in a different form than our society, because it's like specialized. It's a specialized version of homophobia and misogyny for this space station. Anyways, now they're off the space station. We're into part 2, and I'm really interested in where the story goes from here, but I did want to give that background and mention that I might start reading Artificial Condition. But that's it for tonight. I'm just gonna get cozy and read, and then tomorrow morning I'm gonna go to a cafe and continue reading, so I'll probably check in with you after that. I'm back from the cafe, and I wanted to give a quick update while I'm making lunch, meal prepping, because I think we're gonna finish this reading vlog today, which is kind of crazy because I was like, oh, I'm adding another book to the list that I wasn't originally totally sure I was gonna read. I don't know if I'll be able to finish, but I have just been flying through some desperate glory, so I think I only have like 15% of the book left. Like I'm like how many, I don't know what the percentage is, maybe like 50 pages, 60, 70 pages left of the book, and I'm really enjoying it. So, and then I also started Artificial Condition when I was at the cafe, the sequel to All Systems Red, and I'm also enjoying that. I wouldn't say, I feel like I enjoy the first book better, but I think we're still settling into Artificial Condition, so I'm not giving it any like strong opinions yet. But I think I'm gonna finish with that. First I'm gonna finish up this Desperate Glory. I've already forgotten the name of the book. This Desperate Glory. I'm gonna finish that one this afternoon, I think. And then I'm gonna finish Artificial Condition and eat my lunch, obviously, and then wrap up the vlog. I'm on Murderbot Diaries again right now, Artificial Condition, and we just got introduced to a new character called Art, who is an extremely sarcastic, sentient transport vessel that Murderbot kind of stumbles upon and has now befriended kind of like begrudgingly because Murderbot does not appreciate how sarcastic Art is. And I love them so much. I love both Murderbot and Art and them watching trashy TV serials together. So cute. Hi, hello. It's time to wrap up the sci-fi reading vlog, which I am proud and also kind of astounded to say is probably my most successful reading vlog yet in terms of like number of books read and the fact that I loved every single one of these books. None of these books got below a 4-star rating, and we'll get into that a little bit more, but I'm kind of shocked. Maybe sci-fi just is my genre of the moment because every single one of these books worked for me in different ways and had different elements of sci-fi that I love included in them, and that's what made them all so fantastic. So to start off though, I did kind of not give additional updates on the last 2 books I was reading just because I was speeding through them. Like, it's barely been more than 24 hours since I started Some Desperate Glory, and I couldn't put it down. And I read all of Artificial Condition in one sitting, so I didn't need to update. So I wanted to start off with talking about those books first. To start off with Some Desperate Glory, I think my last update, we were only 30% of the way through the book. And we were talking about Keir, short for Valkyr, growing up on a separatist space station that she believes is the last hope for humanity, but is revealed to us is not actually, and it's more like a cult. And then we go through several renditions of the story in a really, really interesting way in the book. Basically, I don't want to give too much away because I didn't know it going in, and that's what made it so interesting. But there was a ton of what they called time folds, redoing moments in time, changing moments in history that allowed us to live out different versions of the main character and different iterations. I think there was basically 3 iterations of her throughout the book. When I was talking about in the first update that she was frustrating me a little bit as a character, then we see very strongly how she changes and how she grows. And it was just so well done in terms of sometimes when you start out with an unlikable character and then at some point they just become likable, usually because of a romance, but sometimes other reasons. And you're like, okay, I'm glad they're likable now, but I don't believe it in my heart of hearts necessarily. That was not the case with Some Desperate Glory. The main character, you didn't even really dislike her in the beginning because I honestly empathized a lot with her. It was clear she was in a cult and she was being groomed for an express purpose that she couldn't see herself. And the people around her really hated her for how strongly she believed in the cult, but that's not really her fault either. And she does work through those emotions really well throughout the book. And yeah, I loved Keir's character. I loved all the characters in Some Desperate Glory. They're just really interesting characters. There's Magnus, her brother, her twin brother, who is the biggest, strongest, best, most eugenicized guy on the space station, but he is incredibly shy, he's queer, he was bullied as a child, he is kind of in Keir's shadow and she doesn't see it. They're living in this really misogynistic society, so she is so jealous of what her brother innately gets to do in this society compared to her that she doesn't really see him for all of who he is, and she has to learn to do that through the book, so we learn to love Mags throughout the book. There's Ali or Ari, I think it's Ari, who is another really interesting character. Any of these characters could have been the main character of the book, which is so cool, right? And this book could have followed any of the main characters. Ari is a really, really one-of-a-kind hacker, computer engineer, programmer, but because of that, he lacks this empathy and compassion for human life innately. And really, that comes up throughout the novel, and he doesn't make good choices throughout the book. But, we don't see him as a villain. He's not villainized. He's just a character who is not necessarily built to do what needs to be done for this world. And that's why, even though he's, much smarter than Keir, the main character, technically, in the beginning, she's oh, he could handle all this by himself. But it's revealed to us why he can't and why it has to be Keir to do something. And then there's also, there's Yiso, Yiso, who is an alien introduced in the book. I love Yiso. They are so interesting as well. They have they're connected to Wisdom, which is a massive AI over the entire, that knows everything and can do anything and has grown almost so large that it's not controllable anymore. And Yiso is connected to that AI and therefore experiences the world in a very different way. I would say Yiso is the most consistent, they're probably the most consistent character throughout the book, and the way that their relationship with Keir, the main character, builds, that ends up, like, even though, like, Keir, like, I called it, Keir is a lesbian. Keir does have a love interest in this girl that she grew up with, that she's in love with, and she didn't realize it at first. That's like a side plot. Like, the romances are very much the side plot of the book. It's a queer book, but the queerness is the center point, not necessarily, like, the romances that are queer, if that makes sense, that difference. And Keir and Yisa's relationship, as she learns to, like, let go of her hatred for aliens that has been ingrained in her since she was a child, and understands Iso as, like, a sentient human, but not human, you know? I think that is just, yeah, so well done. I loved everything about Some Desperate Glory. If you like sci-fi, if you like strong female characters, if you like character-centered stories, I loved Some Desperate Glory. So good. I had such a good time. I wrote in my review that I say this book suffered from only one thing, that I read it right after Infinity Gate. Infinity Gate was, like, one of those, like, really special books to a person. So when I'm reading Some Desperate Glory right afterwards, I just can't help but notice they're like, oh, this element of the world building is less explored than it was in Infinity Gate. Or this thing is maybe not as well done as it wasn't. So I had to let that go a little bit and just, like, let myself enjoy this book for what it is. I think I'm probably going to give it 4.5 stars because it was, like, almost perfect, just unfortunately comes right after, like, a 5-star, my favorite of all time. Like, the little things that bothered me were just things like, in this world there are 17 races of alien across the entire universe, and humans are the tallest and the baddest and the biggest. And that's just, like, really interesting to me. I'm like, really, there's no other universe where species evolved as tall as we are, or taller? Like, that seems kind of random. That seems odd. Like, why are we the tallest? That's a nitpick, right? It's just little things like that what after getting out of Infinity Gate, which deals with the infinite versions of sentient life, like any sentient life you could possibly imagine exists, then Some Desperate Glory just felt like it was reined in more than I like for my sci-fi, but I still really obviously enjoyed it. And then I also picked up Artificial Condition at the coffee shop, brought it home, and then sat down and read the rest of it at home, the second book in the Murderbot Diaries. I'm really happy to be continuing this series. I liked what this book added to the world. I think that's, like, kind of a cop-out answer, but it kind of feels like you're watching a serial. The same way that Murderbot is obsessed with, like, serial dramas, like television shows, Murderbot reads, like, kind of like a serial. Every episode, every installment, they exist as they are, and they still have the same personality traits, and there is, like, a through line of their own personal development happening, but they're facing, like, very different external events. And I think it's a really fun way to go about writing this kind of sci-fi, because, yeah, maybe the plot, each individual plot, isn't big enough to fill a full-length novel. So then the thing that's going to fill the whole series is Murderbot's development as a character, but we're doing short installments because the stories are short and fit into the universe and don't have to be some sort of massive, grandiose scale thing, if that makes sense. So I kind of like that. After reading Some Desperate Glory, which is very much like stopping the murder of billions and billions of people, stopping the murder of planets and solar systems and galaxies, then going into Murderbot again, where it's like, okay, I have these people want their data back and I have to go protect them, feels more like, okay, we're calming down a little bit. It's a good way to, like, wind down the vlog a little bit. I still think I liked the first book of Murderbot more. I feel like we got more of Murderbot's internal conflict in that book. This one felt more of, like, dealing with an external conflict. Like, in order to progress with Murderbot's character development, they need to return to this event that happened in their past and deal with it emotionally. But this book was mostly just about them getting to that event and discovering information. So there wasn't necessarily as much of, like, the internal resolve discussion going on as there was in the first book. But like I said, I still really liked it. We also get introduced to art, which is another bot in this book. It's a transport shuttle AI system that is way more human-like than regular transport shuttles. And I loved art so much. Also, it's so fun continuing Murderbot after reading these 3 other sci-fi books, The Blighted Stars, Infinity Gate, and Some Desperate Glory, because all of them deal with AI consciousness on a certain level, as a lot of sci-fi does, obviously, but deals with the levels of what we consider human and what we care for based on our own experiences of humanity and how we apply that to the other things around us. All those additional sci-fi books creates a great context for me now going into Murderbot, where I'm thinking about all those things already, so that was also fun. But yeah, those are my final thoughts on Some Desperate Glory and Artificial Condition, which makes 5 total books that I read in this vlog, which I'm so happy with, and I loved every single one of them. I wish I had them physically to rank, but as is appropriate for a sci-fi reading vlog, I read them all on my tablet, so they're all digital, as they should be. But if I were to rank them, I think Artificial Condition or The Blighted Stars is probably at the bottom. Not like bottom low, they both are 4 stars for me, I think. Yeah, they're both 4 stars for me, just in terms of general enjoyment. I adored them so much, had so much fun reading them, but like the others were even better. So I think at the bottom, Artificial Condition, The Blighted Stars, and then I think we have Some Desperate Glory, loved, in the middle, then Murderbot, and then on top, I think my favorite I read in this video is absolutely Infinity Gate, just like on a personal level. But as I always say, the difference between 4 stars and 5 stars for me is like my mood on the day, what I'm going through my personal life that reflects in the book, how attached I am. But I think any of these books could have been 5 stars depending on when I read them, which is what made them all so, so good. If I were to give recommendations based on like your own sci-fi level, I would say don't start out with Infinity Gate. As much as I loved it so much because it reminded me of the context of a college level course I took about sci-fi a few years ago. Not saying you have to take a college level course to understand it or anything, just that it was more complicated and like difficult to get into, so I wouldn't necessarily start there. If you're more of a romantic at heart and you like that romance in your sci-fi, The Blighted Stars is perfect for that. If you want something short, like you're very new to sci-fi and you want like, what is this genre about? Then Murderbot is perfect because it's short, it's sweet, it has the like sarcasm and cavalierness of really good sci-fi, but it deals with still like the human versus non-human but consciousness debate really well. If you want good queer sci-fi, Some Desperate Glory is really amazing. And then if you want something a little bit more complicated, I would say go for Infinity Gate. But yeah, I had a lot of feelings about these books, obviously, and I'm gonna come back to them probably and reread them, and you're gonna hear more about these books because I started 3 new series in this video, and I will absolutely be continuing and finishing all 3 of these series. So stick around on my channel if you want to see what the rest of the series has in store. Feel free to comment, like, subscribe. I feel like I haven't been throwing out a bunch of questions or anything to comment on because I've just been loving the books, but if you have any other sci-fi recommendations you want to share with me, I'm all ears. Right now I am in my sci-fi field, so please feel free to send them over. And as always, thank you so, so much for watching this video. Who knows how long this is going to end up being, but if you made it to this point, please comment so I can appreciate that because I do appreciate it so, so much. And I guess I'll see you in the next video. I don't know how it's going to top this one, but we can always try. See you then.